Thanks for coming. We're really excited to move closer to throwing a live pitch on February 14th at Loyola Marymount, and it's going to be a great challenge for us. They were a regional final team last year at UCLA, and they return, I want to say, 7 position players and 2 weekend starters, so going to be a great challenge for us to go down there and compete against a team that's picked to go to the postseason again. And we'll roll into Long Beach State that Tuesday. We're going to stay down there for 10 or so days, and which will be great for us. We'll go to Long Beach State, and then we'll head to Fresno State that same week and have Fresno State at their place Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it'll be a great test for us. We're getting ready for it. We're like everybody else in this part of the country right now. We're dodging raindrops, but getting our work in inside in the Dempsey and outside when we can. And today, as I was just telling Brian, we're on practice plan number 3 as we're trying to figure out whether we're going to be in, out, a little bit of both, or one or the other. But very excited and looking very forward to seeing somebody else in the other dugout and just seeing how our guys handle being on the road.
Lindsay, a lot of new faces this year. How are you doing integrating them, and does that raise your hopes for this year?
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit of everything. It's a lot of new energy, which you love, especially with the young guys. When you have a lot of new bodies and you have a lot of young guys, there's a high energy level at practice, which I think challenges the returning guys and the older guys. And some of those new guys are going to be involved in a frontline role. So, you know, that can be unnerving for the coaching staff because they're untested. At the same time, it's fun to coach those guys because you can't give them enough. So we're going to have some growing pains, and there are going to be some guys who are learning on the fly, but that makes it interesting. It makes it fun. We have some key returners. We're going to have a returning guy up the middle at shortstop. Ramon Bramasco's back. He'll play short for us, and he'll be real steady for us. And is an older veteran guy, Braden Ward, in center field. Is back for his 3rd year. He led the Pac-12 in stolen bases the last 2 years. We've got a great battle going on at second base. Noah Sue, who was our starter last year for the first few weekends, but then tore his ACL at Oregon. Noah's going to make it back. We think he'll be close to full strength that first weekend. Dalton Chandler, a freshman, is giving him a run for his money at second base. And Michael Petrie, who's been our backup catcher behind Nick Cale for the last 2 years, but is a very accomplished defensive catcher. We're really excited about him behind the plate because he's a real calming presence for our guys. And we've got a couple young catchers behind him. Johnny Tincher, who was the LA City Player of the Year 2 years in a row as a high school junior and senior. He's a freshman who's pushing Michael in every way, shape, or form. So up the middle, we're going to have some young guys, but we still feel good about that. And the pitching staff is going to be, kind of a veteran staff. Stevie Emanuels, who has a chance to be a first-round draft pick from Interlake, will be on everybody's radar as soon as we get down to Southern California. Obviously, David Rhodes, who was our Friday guy last year as a freshman, he's back. So we're excited about that. Jack Angers made a huge jump from Bellevue High School, and he's going to be a mainstay for us either in the rotation or early out of the pen. Leo Nierenberg's made a big jump. He touched 95 miles an hour over the weekend with a really good slider, kind of a wipeout slider. So we feel like the pitching staff will kind of be led by some veterans who have been through it. Some of those guys have pitched in the College World Series and have pitched on weekends. So it's a great balance of youth and returning guys. And in this conference, you need that. This is going to be a wild ride, I think, for all of us because of all the change. Oregon's got a completely new staff. SC has a completely new staff. Washington State has a completely new staff. Oregon State, Pat Casey deciding not to come back. They have a relatively new staff, so a lot of changes and going to be a lot of interesting Friday nights the first time through.
You have a new staff member, but an old face.
Right.
What does Elliot's presence mean to your program?
Elliot's been great. Change is just an a part of this game. We tell our players all the time, if you want to play at the next level and ultimately play at the highest level, you're going to have a different pitching coach every year in the minor leagues. You're going to have a different manager every year in the minor leagues. If you get to the big leagues, you'll be lucky to have the continuity on the staff for any 2 or 3 years in a row, as you guys all know. So change is part of this. Elliott's been great. He's been a nice change for us. JK did a fantastic job for us. We were lucky to have him. We miss him. At the same time, Elliott's brought a different presence for us. Elliott went to school here. I don't know that there's a person in this athletic department that feels more affection for this place and loyalty than Elliott Kribbe. Pitched here, Dad went here and played here. He loves this place and has been fantastic in terms of the energy, and just picked up right where JK left off in terms of stepping in and becoming the recruiting coordinator. And he's crushed it. We obviously can't talk about names in the 21 and 22 classes, but we're bursting at the seams with kids from the state of Washington who have committed to us in those two groups. And so I couldn't be more pleased with, not just his intensity and his effort, but the skill he's shown with our pitching staff. He's been great.
What was it that led you to put Emmanuel's in the bullpen, and has there ever been any temptation to put him in the rotation?
Yes, Stevie will be in the rotation for us. Right now, David Rhodes would start on Friday. Stevie would start on Saturday. The reason we had Stevie in the bullpen last year was just because we wanted to use him a couple times during the weekend if we could. He was one of those guys that's resilient enough, and he recovers. He could throw on Friday, possibly throw again on Saturday, or throw on Saturday and possibly throw again on Sunday. And, this is a 2 out of 3 thing every weekend. That's the goal, is to try. You'd love to win them all. But, if you win 2 out of 3, you're going to be in a regional. If you win 2 out of 3 every weekend, you're going to host a regional. So when you have a guy like Stevie that is pretty flexible and recovers well, you're tempted to. It's sometimes hard not to overuse him because of how resilient he is. And so we got to be careful with that. But Stevie's going to start for us on Saturday.
The current juniors were freshmen when you guys went to the College World Series a couple years ago. How have you seen them step into a leadership role after kind of being new to the scene when you guys went so far into the postseason?
Yeah, they've been great. They've tried to help our younger guys, if you want to say, pace themselves a little bit, because as you know, when you're new to something, it's 24/7, and your foot's on the gas, and sometimes you forget to stop and breathe and take a step back and slow down. So that's the biggest challenge with the youth on the team, is to try to get them to play as hard as they can and to play fast at the same time, not be out of control. And that's where some of our younger, or rather our older guys have helped. Guys who, like you said, played in a super regional at Fullerton, played in Omaha. They've been able to help those guys learn from their mistakes. Still keep the hammer down when they have a good day the day before. So they've been a great example of how to play the game, and they've been a good example of how to handle themselves off the field. They've done a great job.
You have a player on the roster from Orange Coast College, and I'm sure you knew Coach Altobelli quite well. What's been the impact, the feeling for yourself and for this young man?
We actually have 2, and Tommy Williams, who will likely start for us at third base, who's a Texas kid who went to Orange Coast from the state of Texas. Tommy played for John last year before he came to us. And Davis, our left fielder, was actually at the University of Utah as a freshman and transferred to Coast. So those guys are here because of my relationship with John. And he could have sent those guys anywhere, but I've known John for 25 years. And we talked over the summer about what our needs were, like we would always do. And John always has players, but like John would tell me, I don't know if I have the kind of players every year that you want, that are tough enough to do the things that you want them to do and can play in that league. And so when we talked this summer, he said, hey, these are 2 guys that you want. And so that was a rough day for those guys, because we were like everybody. We got the news about Kobe as we were just trickling into the building. And then our guys began to stretch, and my son Jack, who was in Southern California, called me and he said, hey, I think Coach Altobelli was on that chopper. And so we didn't want to say anything until we got some actual confirmation, but obviously we found out we had to pull the kids out of practice at the beginning, and I sat them down and we talked about it, and what can you do? I mean, that's as difficult, I think, a circumstance for a 21-year-old kid. It's difficult for a 57-year-old head coach when you lose a friend like that, but these guys, I think they handled it about as well as they could, and their teammates were real helpful in terms of understanding what they were going through. I talked to their families as well, and we have great resources here to help kids who are going through things like that. I mean, I would hate to think what it might have been like if they weren't here, because I know how this place handles those types of things. So they were lucky that they were here when we had to break that awful news. But they've been great, and they know John would have wanted them to get back on the field as soon as possible, and they know that John would have wanted them to carry on that Orange Coast College Pirate tradition as well as they could under the circumstances. So they've bounced back. They still have their moments. They're going to for a while. We all are, but I give them credit because they're right back in the saddle.
Does your relationship go back to when you were playing and coaching in Southern California?
You know what? John and I coached against each other in a regional final game. I was at Long Beach City College in 1993, and the winner would go on to the Final Four for the Junior College Championship in the state of California. And it was Orange Coast versus Long Beach City, and we lost a heartbreaker. That you never forget those games. But we became friends after that because it was such a wild game. And then when I left for Chico, we had a lot of Orange Coast guys. And then I had a couple Orange Coast guys at Indiana State. And then when I got to the University of Washington, he couldn't wait to send me players because he was thrilled to have, a relationship with somebody in the Pac-12. And at a place like this where kids from Southern California find this place to be pretty unique and different from anything they've ever seen. I mean, we had a great relationship. He was a great guy, great family man, great coach, was a good player at the University of Houston. So that's just a really tough deal for everybody in the college baseball community.
You weren't necessarily planning on having Christian Jones back for this year, but after he had some injury issues last year, he's back. How big of a boost is that to your lineup, especially with the power back that he brings?
I think it's a good thing for Christian and a good thing for us because when he had the surgery on his hand last year, I think he might have been able to come back for the last 25% of the season, but he wasn't going to be right. We needed him because we were so beat up, but we sat down and talked about the fact that even if he did, and somebody would have drafted him, which they would have, he wouldn't have been real healthy heading into professional baseball. And that's not how he wanted to begin a professional baseball career. So we both agreed it was in his best interest and certainly ours this year to get him back and have him 100%. And he's every bit 100%. He's in the best shape I've ever seen him in. He was voted captain, a captain by his teammates, and he's really embraced that. He's been a great leader for us, and like anybody else who has something taken away from him that they love, I mean, you can see just the energy and the attitude. He's really excited to be on the field.
Are you looking at him in terms of a right fielder, or are you possibly moving him in?
He'll play right field, and he may, on occasion, DH, but defensively, that's where you're going to see him, and in the middle of the batting order.
If Stevie is starter now, then could you see closing? Committee?
I can see Leo Nierenberg closing. Leo's a guy that has closer stuff, and we think in terms of just the intangibles, because he's been here, this is year 4 for him. He's a really bright kid. He's a real academic kid, so just in terms of the preparation, he understands what we're trying to do. He's, consistently low 90s, will touch 95. He has a really effective wipeout slider. In fact, I was trying to get out of my office to get over here, and the A's had called me about him because they were here over the weekend and saw him, and now they're excited about seeing him again. But he's got closer stuff. If he gets out of the gate quickly, I mean, he could be a beast in that role. So, we're excited to hand him the ball at Loyola, hopefully with a lead in the 9th inning. That's the plan.
Last year, your bullpen relied a lot on Chris Michaels, who kind of came out of nowhere after after a down year before. Do you see any guys coming out of the pen and taking that kind of setup man role?
We have a couple guys that I don't know if I'd compare. You know, Chris was left-handed, and Chris was a left-handed power arm. Gabe Smith is a junior college transfer who's the complete opposite. He's right-handed. It's kind of a high three-quarters slot, but he can really sink it with a good slider. He'll take some of the burden off of our starting staff because he can come in early into a game and you can stretch him out a little bit. He can come into the game in the fifth inning and maybe get 2 or 3 innings out of him. Logan Gerling from Tacoma Community College from TCC was a starter for them for the last 2 years, lost 1 game in 2 years. I think he's, I want to say, 15-1 in 2 years. And we're going to have the luxury of using him as a 4th starter or kind of a long guy or setup guy in the bullpen. So he'll take some of that burden away from Leo. And then Dylan Lamb is back. Dylan is much improved from last year. Is throwing a much tighter slider, throwing harder, doing a good job there. The real jump that we have in terms of any one particular guy is Jack DeCooman. We used Jack as a starter last year on occasion. He struggled coming into the game out of the bullpen because he just struggled with his command, but he's up to 91, put some 92s up there, and is throwing a better slider. Leo's a power slider from the right-hand side, and Jack DeCooman is a slider from the left-hand side. Elliot Kribbe's done a really good job with Jack, and Jack can be used in the rotation. You can use him, as is fairly common now, to start a game, get through the batting order a couple times, and then slide somebody else in there. So we've got some depth in the bullpen, some veteran depth that we're excited about, and a couple new guys that we think will help out.
Community colleges are also been a huge part of your guys' recruiting strategy the last couple of years. How have you built those relationships, especially all of this community college talent in Washington?
Well, I don't know that there's a community college baseball player in the state of Washington that wouldn't be thrilled to play in our facility and to play in this league and to play in a program that they think is going to have a chance to go to the College World Series. We like those JC guys when we need to fill a hole immediately because they're usually pretty battle tested and they're older and they have at-bats under their belt and innings. So the ones we have on our club this year are no different. They're pretty tested and have been through some things and played in some big games. So we're excited to get those guys on the field. They've given us a little bit of an edge that you don't always have, and I think they provide some really important balance to our program.